So I'm creating a skull out of primitive shapes, and at the moment the shapes still look fairly primitive. So what I want to do is get a more organic look, and I'm using this as reference, this template layer. If you want to follow along, you can open up Blob Brush Skull Start AI, and you'll notice I've got two artboards. I've got a practice artboard where I've been practicing, and on this artboard I have my skull with a template layer. And you'll see these layers up here in the Layers panel. If you can't see your Layers panel in your Artboards panel, you can open them from the window menu. Now, we're going to work on the knife layer, so make sure you select that and select the Blob Brush tool. Now, you can set up the Blob Brush however you want it. I'm going to use a fixed size, and the size that I have is round about that size at the moment, and we're going to stick with that. Now, if I just paint, I have black selected for the Blob Brush tool. And I don't really want that, I want to use white, so I'm going to undo that and just go up to my colour panel and choose white. Now notice when I choose white, it's choosing white as my stroke colour, and that's what the Blob Brush uses. It uses the stroke colour to create my shape. Now notice that as I paint on the skull, it's just changing the shape of my skull. Now I want to be careful I don't paint over the black, because that creates a new shape. So I'm just going to make my Blob Brush a little bit smaller. As long as I just paint on the skull itself, I'm just going to adjust the size and shape of that skull. So just being careful not to go onto the black shape, making the brush bigger or smaller as I need to do it. Okay, so we can make it look a little bit more organic just by adjusting that. Now I may also want to start giving him some teeth. So I'm going to start by giving him a rough jawline. And just draw that in. Now you may be finding this a little bit tricky if you have a mouse. I'm using a Wacom pen and tablet here, which makes it a little bit easier. And what I'm going to do is create some teeth now. And to create the teeth, I'm going to go into the Blob Brush settings and choose a different shaped brush. Now I'm going to choose an angled brush, and I can angle it and rotate it and do all these amazing things by using this little indicator. Or I can use these sliders down here or type in values. So I'm going to bring the roundness down quite low. We'll also bring the size down a little bit and click OK. And now what I can do is just click and drag to create teeth. Now that's a little bit too small, so I'm just going to make that brush a little bit bigger by hitting the left and right square bracket tools. Now we could also give it a little bit of an angle. I could just tilt it that way slightly and paint in the teeth on this side. Okay, paint in a couple of teeth there. And then I'm going to double click it again, rotate it around that way, and paint in a couple of teeth here. In fact, we'll just put one in, and then I'm going to bring the size down and make this one a little bit smaller. Okay, so we've created some teeth on the bottom. Let's create some teeth on this shape. Now, if I'm to select the Blob Brush tool and just start painting here, notice it's just going to extend that shape at the bottom, which is fine. So let's just paint a couple of teeth in there. We'll have one in the middle there. And then we're going to go into our Blob Brush settings and change the angle again. And then paint on this side here. Make it a little bit bigger. And create a nice big tooth there. Okay, now what else are we going to do? We're also going to adjust the jaw, so we need to pull these edges up. So again, I'm going to change my brush. Now this is the only downside to the Blob Brush tool. The brush settings are in here, so there's no way of easily saving the settings for these, so we just have to come in and keep adjusting them. So I'm going to adjust that back to a round brush, so we'll put that up to 100%. And this time I'm going to use a little bit of pressure sensitivity to create a variation in size so that I can control that. And I'm going to go down here, make my brush a little bit smaller. And let's create a little jawline. Okay, so we're creating the shape of his jaw as well. Okay, I also want to give this a more soft edge, so I'm going to create a few curves in here, fill in those gaps, and we'll do the same here, create a jawline, and then come down here and create a more curved edge for his jaw. I can move it up and create a curved edge here as well. Or, if I wanted to, I could just make a really big brush. So let's just make it a lot bigger. Let's make it fixed. And let's adjust not the angle, but the roundness. Okay, put that back on 0. Click OK. Make it a little bit bigger. And once it's wide enough to fill that gap, I can just click once to create my jawline instead of having to paint with my brush tool. Now, if I'm to change to a black colour, so if I go over here and choose black as my stroke colour, I can then make my brush smaller. So we're getting lots of practice at bigger and smaller brushes. Let's make it fixed, and we'll also take the roundness all the way up to 100. Now we have a little error here happening. I'm not sure why that's happening. It should actually show us just a fixed size. But I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to adjust the shape of these a little bit. Just make them a little bit less uniform. So it's always good to start off with primitive shapes, but you want to kind of customize them, make them a little bit more organic. And same here, I've got the triangle that I drew using the star tool, funnily enough. If you draw a star tool with 3 corners or 3 points, that's a good way of creating a triangle. So I'm just going to adjust the triangle as well. If we have a look at that, you'll see we're getting closer to a skull shape. Now it's not quite right. I need to fix it up a little bit more, but you get the idea, we're getting there. And if you have a look at Blob Brush Skull End AI, here's another version. So each time I paint with the blob brush, I come up with something different. I could make the skull a little bit bigger just by using a bigger brush and painting around here as well. So there's no right or wrong, just have a practice, have a play with it, and see what you come up with.